On February 1st, 1960, 4 African-American college students, Joseph McNeil, Isel Blair, Franklin McCain, and David Richmond, entered a Woolworths store and sat down at the lunch counter reserved for whites. The students did not receive much of a reaction. However, they recruited more students, and the next morning, 30 students occupied the lunch counter, attracting the attention of local reporters. Although the Greensboro sit-ins were discontinued as the store manager temporarily closed the store, the idea spread to other states. Greensboro served as a catalyst for an entire movement and ultimately spawned the birth of SNCC.
The SNCC movement can be broken down into 5 major parts which characterize its existence in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. These factions include the Sit-in Movement, Freedom Rides, Freedom Ballots, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and the March on Washington. SNCC was student-run, meaning college students and youth of society can take on active roles in activism to make their voice heard about the situation which plagued American society for centuries, racism. The committee was founded at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and had its official meeting in May of 1960 in Atlanta, Georgia. A month later, it issued its first newsletter, The Student Voice, which consisted of reports of the first meetings, then later giving news about activist reforms and efforts and demonstrations given by the members. As with any organization, leadership was key. For SNCC, women leadership was also a crucial aspect of its success. Ella Baker, a former member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, had conceived the idea of SNCC and was an essential organizer in its operations. The first elected chairman of SNCC was Marion Barry, and third after him came a very influential leader named John Lewis. Lewis came from poverty and worked his way up in society with education and activism. Lewis joined SNCC via the Freedom Rides and helped plan the March on Washington. Another well-known chairman included Stokely Carmichael, known for his efforts and concepts behind the Black Power movement, and later H. Rap Brown, known for his radical views of rights for African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. was another important figure, helping aggregate students to join. He had hoped SNCC would become the youth wing of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but they strictly stayed as an independent organization. Another influential figure was the activist Horace Julian Bond, son of Horace Mann Bond, an African-American educator and reformer. Bond helped establish SNCC, being one of its co-founders, along with Bernard Lafayette, Charles Sherrod, Ella Baker, and Diane Nash.
The first sit-in occurred in Greensboro, North Carolina. This led students across the South to participate in sit-ins. At the end of April, sit-ins reached every southern state and attracted as many as 50,000 students. The majority of the sit-ins were characterized by strict discipline, although several outbreaks of violence occurred among high school students.
SNCC had also participated in Freedom Rides. In 1961, the Supreme Court decision to end desegregation in transportation prompted SNCC's movement in the Freedom Rides. A group of 7 black and 6 white people left D.C. for New Orleans on 2 buses. They made it through Virginia and North Carolina without incident. However, as they traveled deeper south, the group encountered violence. In Alabama, a mob surrounded the Greyhound bus, slashed its tires, and set it on fire. The Freedom Ride's success in the Upper South ended in the Deep South, leaving the riders wounded but determined.
SNCC continued its actions by advocating voting rights. Members viewed voting rights as a significant move towards racial equality. During the fall of 1963, SNCC organized the Freedom Ballot in Mississippi, where black voting power was the weakest. The Freedom Ballot platform requested an end to segregation, fair employment, improved education, and guaranteed suffrage. Students from Stanford and Yale joined 49 SNCC members. Unfortunately, they encountered violence. Mississippi whites attacked white Northern students. Although many campaign workers were arrested, the Freedom Ballot was still a success. Nearly 80,000 blacks came out to vote.
The Freedom Ballot set the stage for Mississippi's Summer Project, which had 3 goals: to register voters, operate freedom schools, and organize the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. On Freedom Day, black people gathered together in an effort to register to vote. They faced challenges from whites as several people were killed that day. However, resistors were not discouraged. The goal of the blacks was to take Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party to the Democratic National Convention that summer. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party was not convinced, but did offer a compromise in which the MFDP would receive 2 non-voting seats. However, SNCC refused to accept the offer. Members did not gain the voting seats they desired, so they left the convention defeated but proud.
In August of 1963, a crowd of 200,000 people gathered around the Lincoln Memorial to hear civil rights leaders such as John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. speak. Lewis and King held different beliefs as shown through their speeches. Lewis believed the federal government did not do enough to improve black rights, especially in the Deep South. His more angry speech reflected his frustration with the government.
We marched today for jobs and freedom, but we have nothing to be proud of. For hundreds and thousands of our brothers are not here, for they have no money for transportation, for they are receiving starvation wages, or no wages at all.
SNCC's legacy takes on multiple forms to this day. Its pool of ideas contributed to organizations such as the Women's Rights Movement and the Chicano Farm Workers Movement.
The Student National Cooperation Committee lives on to this day in the SNCC Legacy Project, commemorating its efforts in the Civil Rights Movement. SNCC recently had its 50th anniversary, where veterans of SNCC came together to document the under-recognized impact of its youth organization, trying to show how the younger generation can have a large impact on society.